People's opinions are like passing clouds. They shift, they change, and yet we spend so much of our lives adjusting ourselves to them as if they were the ultimate truth. But they are not. They are projections, reflections of individual experiences, biases, insecurities, and personal worldviews. And yet, from the moment we are born, we are conditioned to value these ever-changing, unreliable perceptions over our own direct experience of life. Why? Because society thrives on conformity. From childhood, we are taught to seek approval. A child who behaves in a way that pleases the adults is rewarded. A child who deviates from the norm is corrected, disciplined, or even ostracized. Over time, this conditioning embeds itself so deeply in our psyche that we begin to mistake external validation for self-worth. We start measuring our success not by our own internal compass, but by how others react to us. This is where the suffering begins. Living life based on opinions is like chasing a mirage. You can never truly reach a point where everyone approves of you because opinions are subjective, ever-shifting, and often contradictory. What one person praises, another will criticize. What is admired today may be ridiculed tomorrow. If you base your happiness on external validation, you will always be at the mercy of forces beyond your control. The greatest illusion is the belief that we must be liked by everyone to be worthy. The truth is, no matter what you do, someone will disapprove.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
No matter how kind you are, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how successful you become, someone will envy you. This is the nature of human perception. It is fragmented, incomplete, and often distorted. So why give it power over your life? Why let something so unreliable dictate your actions, your emotions, your sense of self? The moment you stop seeking approval, you gain power. When you stop being controlled by opinions, you become free to act based on your own truth. But this is not easy because the ego, the false self, thrives on validation. It craves attention, admiration, and recognition. It fears rejection, criticism, and being ignored. The ego is fragile because it is built on something external rather than internal. It can never be satisfied because its foundation is unstable. But you are not your ego. You existed before you learned to care about opinions. You existed before the world told you who you should be. Your essence, your true being, is beyond all labels, beyond all judgments, beyond all external definitions. The reason people struggle to break free from opinions is that they confuse rejection with their own worth. But rejection is not about you, it is about the other person's perspective, preferences, and limitations. If someone dislikes you, it does not mean you are unworthy. It simply means you do not fit into their particular view of the world, and that is okay. Why should you fit into everyone's view? Why should your existence be measured by someone else's personal lens? The moment you stop taking opinions personally, you reclaim your freedom. But this requires awareness. Most people react unconsciously to criticism. They feel hurt, defensive, or angry because they assume that an opinion carries some absolute truth. But it does not. It is merely a reflection of the mind that produced it. If someone calls you a failure, it does not make you a failure any more than someone calling you a genius makes you a genius. These are just word sounds in the air. They have no power unless you accept them. The reason opinions affect us so deeply is that we attach them to our identity. If you see yourself as successful and someone calls you a failure, you feel threatened because your identity is being challenged. But what if you had no fixed identity? What if you were simply present, simply being, without clinging to any labels? Then no opinion could shake you because you would have nothing to defend. This is true confidence, not the arrogance of needing to prove yourself, but the deep inner knowing that you are enough as you are. When you stop caring about approval, you become fearless. You take risks without worrying about judgment. You express your ideas without filtering them through the lens of what is acceptable. You follow your passion without hesitation. And paradoxically, this authenticity attracts the right people into your life. Those who resonate with your true self will be drawn to you, while those who only liked your mask will fade away. And that is a good thing, because relationships based on pretense are not real relationships at all. But the shift from seeking approval to living freely is not instant. It requires practice. The first step is awareness, realizing how much of your life is dictated by opinions. Pay attention to your thoughts. How often do you make decisions based on fear of judgment? How often do you hold back your true self because of what others might say? Once you become aware of this, you can start to break free. The second step is questioning. When an opinion affects you, ask yourself, is this true? Is this objectively real, or is it just someone's perspective? Most of the time, you will find that opinions are not facts. They are interpretations, and interpretations are not reality. The third step is detachment. Practice seeing opinions as external noise rather than personal attacks. Imagine them as passing traffic there, but irrelevant to your journey. The more you detach, the less control opinions have over you. The final step is presence. The more present you are, the less you are caught in the mind's narratives. Opinions exist in the realm of thought, but your true self exists beyond thought. When you are fully present, opinions lose their grip because you are no longer identified with the mind that reacts to them. This is why mindfulness, meditation, and self-awareness are so powerful. They shift your focus from external validation to internal peace. The irony is that the less you care about being liked, the more people respect you. Why? Because true confidence is rare. Most people are trapped in the cycle of approval seeking. When they see someone who is free, they are drawn to that energy. They may not always agree with you, but they will respect you because authenticity has a magnetic power. But do not mistake this for indifference. Not caring about opinions does not mean becoming cold or dismissive. It means not being controlled by them. You can still listen to feedback, learn from perspectives, and grow, but you do so from a place of strength, not insecurity. You take what is useful and discard what is not. You remain open yet unshaken. And this is true power, the power to walk your own path without fear, to express yourself without hesitation, to live fully without seeking permission. Imagine waking up tomorrow and living as if no opinion had any power over you. Imagine making choices based purely on what felt right to you, without fear of judgment. That is true freedom, and that is the life you deserve. Most people live their entire lives trapped in an invisible cage, a cage built not of steel or stone but of opinions, expectations, and societal norms that dictate who they should be, how they should act, and what they should value. From childhood, this programming begins at shaping the mind into a pattern of dependence where self-worth is measured not by an internal sense of being, but by the approval of others. This conditioning is so deep that most do not even realize they are enslaved by it. They mistake it for reality, believing that their fears of judgment, rejection, or failure are natural and unavoidable, when in reality, these fears are illusions given power only by unquestioned belief. If a person were raised in an environment where no one cared about status, appearance, or validation, would they still have the same anxieties? No, because these anxieties are not fundamental to human nature. They are learned, absorbed from a world obsessed with comparison. The greatest tragedy is not failure or rejection, but a life spent suppressing one's true self, just to fit into a mold that was never real to begin with. The opinions of others are like shifting winds. What is praised today is forgotten tomorrow. What is ridiculed now may be celebrated in the future. History is proof of this, filled with thinkers, artists, and pioneers who were mocked in their time, only to be revered long after their deaths. This alone should be enough to show that opinions are fleeting, unreliable, and often meaningless. And yet, despite knowing this, people continue to shape their lives around them. They hesitate to speak their truth, afraid of how it will be received. They suppress their dreams, fearing that failure will make them look foolish. They live in constant anticipation of approval, seeking validation like a thirsty man chasing a mirage. But the truth is, no amount of approval will ever be enough because the need for it is a bottomless pit. The more one chases it, the more dependent they become. Even when they receive praise, they immediately fear losing it. It is a cycle of endless craving, a prison without walls, a game that can never be won because the rules are always changing. The only way to win is not to play. To step outside of the illusion and see it for what it is, a creation of the mind, a construct built from years of conditioning. A shadow that vanishes the moment one stops feeding it attention. When a person truly stops caring about opinions, they experience a kind of freedom most cannot even imagine. Decisions are no longer made based on fear but on truth. Actions are no longer driven by external expectations but by inner clarity. Life becomes lighter, more fluid, more authentic. Instead of living for others, one begins to truly live for themselves, not in a selfish way but in an honest way, moving through the world with a sense of purpose unshaken by criticism or praise. But this detachment does not mean becoming indifferent or isolated. It means no longer being controlled. It means recognizing that opinions are just projections, reflections of a person's own mind, rather than an objective truth about reality. When someone criticizes, they are revealing more about themselves than about the person they judge. Their words are filtered through their own fears, insecurities, and biases. Understanding this makes it impossible to take anything personally. A confident man is called arrogant by the insecure. A free woman is called reckless by those who live in fear. A person who follows their own path is called selfish by those who expect conformity. Every opinion is rooted in the perspective of the one giving it, not in objective reality. When this is seen clearly, opinions lose their power. They become noise, background chatter, irrelevant to one's true direction. But breaking free from their grip requires awareness, practice, and courage, because the mind has been trained for years to seek validation. The first step is observation, to notice how often thoughts are influenced by external judgment. Most people act on automatic, adjusting their behavior without even realizing why. They laugh at jokes they do not find funny just to fit in. They wear clothes they do not like just to be accepted. They say things they do not believe just to avoid conflict. This unconscious conformity is the root of suffering, because it creates a disconnect between who a person truly is and how they present themselves to the world. The more this gap widens, the more anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction grow. The second step is questioning. Just because a belief has been held for years does not make it true. Many people live by rules they have never examined, rules passed down through culture, family, or social norms. But who decided these rules? Are they based on truth, or are they simply traditions repeated without thought? When opinions are questioned, their illusion is exposed. A rule that once seemed absolute is revealed as arbitrary. A fear that once felt real is seen as imaginary. The third step is action. Knowing that opinions do not matter is one thing, living as if they do not is another. This requires courage, because it means stepping into discomfort, doing things that may attract criticism, standing firm in one's truth, even when others disagree. But every time one acts despite fear, the fear loses its grip. Every time one refuses to conform, their inner strength grows. And soon, what once seemed terrifying becomes effortless. Confidence is not about never feeling doubt or fear, but about not being ruled by them. It is the ability to move forward regardless of external noise, to trust oneself above all else. The irony is that the moment a person stops seeking approval, they often receive more respect than ever before. Why? Because authenticity is rare. Most people are trapped in the same cycle of fear and validation. When they see someone who is free, they are drawn to that energy. They may not always agree, but they admire the courage. This is why the most influential people in history were never those who followed the crowd, but those who dared to walk their own path. The ones who refused to bend to opinion, who spoke their truth regardless of how it was received, who lived not for validation but for something greater. They understood that opinions are like echoes, loud in the moment but fading with time, ultimately meaningless in the grand scheme of life. But the real question is this: what would life look like if opinion had no power? If fear of judgment disappeared completely? If every action was taken purely based on internal truth rather than external expectation? The answer is simple: life would be fully lived. No hesitation, no suppression, no regrets. Just pure, unfiltered existence, flowing freely, unchained by the invisible prison that binds so many. And that is the ultimate freedom. Most people never realize how deeply they are controlled by opinions because the conditioning starts so early that it feels natural. From childhood, the mind is programmed to seek approval, to adjust behavior based on reaction, to fear rejection as if it were a physical threat. But rejection is not dangerous. It does not cause real harm. It is only the ego that feels wounded when dismissed, criticized, or ignored. This is because the ego is fragile, built entirely on external recognition. It needs constant validation to feel secure, and when that validation is threatened, it reacts with fear, anger, or self-doubt. But none of this is necessary. A person who understands that their worth has nothing to do with external approval is immune to these reactions. They remain unaffected whether others praise or condemn them because they know that opinions are projections, not truths. But every judgment reveals more about the one making it than the one receiving it. People criticize based on their own insecurities, fears, and perspectives. When someone calls another person weak, it is often because they fear weakness in themselves. When they accuse someone of arrogance, it is often because they struggle with their own self-worth. This is why taking opinions personally is meaningless. The words of another person do not define reality, they only define that person's internal world. The moment this is understood, the power of opinions collapses. They become background noise, no different from the sound of traffic or the wind blowing through trees. They exist, but they carry no weight. The real tragedy is how many decisions are made based on fear of judgment. So many opportunities are missed, so many dreams abandoned, so much potential wasted just because of imaginary limitations imposed by other people's perspectives. But these limitations are not real. They are illusions, barriers created by a mind that has been conditioned to seek safety and approval. True freedom begins when a person stops acting based on fear of what others will think. It is the ability to move forward without hesitation, to speak honestly without filtering words for acceptance, and to live in a way that aligns with one's deepest truth rather than societal expectations. And the irony is that the moment a person stops seeking approval, they become more respected. Those who are confident in themselves naturally attract admiration because confidence is rare. Most people are trapped in insecurity, adjusting themselves constantly to fit in, and when they see someone who is free, they are drawn to that energy. This is why the most influential figures in history were never those who lived for approval, but those who ignored it entirely. The ones who changed the world did not ask for permission. They did not hesitate because of criticism. They acted based on internal conviction, and that is what set them apart. But breaking free from opinions does not mean becoming indifferent to people. It does not mean ignoring feedback or isolating oneself. It means seeing opinions for what they are: temporary, subjective, and ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of life. It means taking what is useful and discarding the rest without emotional reaction. When a person reaches this state, they no longer waste energy defending themselves, proving themselves, or worrying about perception. They simply live. And that is the greatest power anyone can have: the ability to move through the world without chains.